Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Fangs for Fantasy, our weekly podcast from the bloggers at Fangs for Fantasy, where we discuss urban fantasy in all its myriad forms, all through our social justice lens. As ever, your hosts are me, Paul, and Renee. Hello, Renee.
Hello, Paul.
Hello. And we will be arguing about things later. But originally, I think we're going to hit the ground running because there's so much on at the moment, and run into The Walking Dead.
Yes.
She who has taken to her bed has woken up.
Yes, and quite surprising, she has a bit of spunk to her. I'm really glad to see it. I feel Beth has been redeemed a little bit.
I actually didn't want someone to kill her. She's actually quite a step up because I found her a rather pointless and annoying character. But then again, I think her time with Daryl last season was supposed to be all about Beth waking up a little bit.
Yeah.
This is the result. It's a good sign. I mean, it also shows that you don't necessarily have to be lethal like Michonne or awe-inspiring like Carol to still be a strong, decent female character.
I mean, like I said, as I said in my recap, it is a bit repetitive because we did see Carol grow and become very kick-ass, but I have no objection to finding another strong, kick-ass female character. Anything that takes us away from Sheriff Angsty.
Yes, that would be a bonus. I think she'll end up in a different place from Carol because I don't think they can't all be as supreme as Carol because that would just be. There'd be no zombies left in the world.
Mm-hmm.
One Carol has to be the limit.
Well, they can go. I mean, Carol can take the lead, and Beth can follow up as her apprentice, right?
Mm-hmm. That would work. You can be the sidekick, Beth.
You know, like Beth can be Robin to Carol's Batman.
Yeah, wouldn't she have to be kidnapped a lot to be a sidekick? Mind you.
Well.
She just has been.
Mm-hmm.
So I was actually surprising because I did kind of expect to hate this episode, to be perfectly honest. When I heard we were going to have a Beth, they were all going to go after Beth, I thought, oh no, why? Just leave her there. So I was actually really pleasantly surprised.
Well, I think too, Beth didn't give up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, every minute throughout the episode, I kept waiting for Beth to take to her bed.
Mm-hmm.
And she didn't.
To wilt and be rescued.
Mm-hmm. And she didn't wait. And even after being recaptured, Beth grabbed those scissors and she was getting ready again to cause some shit.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, this is a new Beth.
And it's also nice to see she didn't accept what the Doctor had accepted, which I mean is in some ways is quite a reasonable thing to expect people to accept. This idea that you have food, you have medical supplies, you have relative safety. This must be better than the alternative, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can, even though as a viewer it's tempting to say no, you weak and feeble people. How could you put up with that? If we were in that situation, can we honestly say we wouldn't take the path of most stability, the path of most safety?
Well, that's just, I mean, he's got clothing, he's got food, he's got shelter.
Mm-hmm.
His basic requirements for subsistence are met there.
And compare that to the main gang who are always grimy, wearing rags, have perfect hair, of course, because it's a special dystopian world.
Mm-hmm.
Unshaven, often hungry. And you can see, particularly since he doesn't have any group to fall back on. I mean, very few people can exist alone in this world.
Yeah, I think, I don't judge him for staying. I
No.
completely understand it because we've seen the road outside.
And it brings home, it's the same kind of message we had with the governor around, that, sometimes, there isn't a lot of options.
Mm-hmm. And here's the other thing. He showed that the hospital is surrounded by zombies. And I thought back because they wanted you to think back to season 1, right?
Hmm.
And you think back to what Atlanta looked like and why the team had to get out of there and get away from a big city.
Yep,
And he's stuck in the heart of it.
exactly. I mean, the chances of him getting out of there,
Mm-hmm.
it's remote. I mean, it is unreasonable to think that he would try to make a break for on his own, no matter how evil his group is. You might as well effectively ask him to commit suicide.
Exactly.
Particularly
I
if he
don't
has a
judge you for saying
counter
it.
example.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Beth knows, in theory, there are people out there for her.
Um, she know, she knows, she knows, but she's been sheltered. I mean, she
Hmm.
spent a lot of time in the prison, which was relatively safe. It's not like she was going out on runs. She was the nanny, you know.
Yeah.
And before that, there was Herschel's farm. So Beth has had some time on the road, but she hasn't had nearly as much as Rick or Carl, for instance.
She's also had she's always had someone there to have her back, and she's never been part of an abusive group either.
Yeah.
And she has every reason to believe that if she did leave this place, somewhere out there is Maggie and Rick and everyone else and Daryl who will look after her again. All right, maybe it's a little hopeful, but there's still that chance.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an interesting dynamic in that you can't just point to Demon, which I think brings us to another really interesting dynamic in Dawn.
Yes. Queen of Compromise.
Hmm. She's sat in the pot of water, and it's just getting hotter and hotter and hotter, and she's not realised it's boiling.
Mm-hmm. Well, again, it's the same sort of deal, right?
Hmm.
She has to hold on to hope. Otherwise, what does she have? She, excuse me. She has a hospital full of rogue cops, and she's surrounded by zombies.
Hmm. I mean, particularly since her group is toxic,
Uh
she
huh.
needs to believe this lie. Particularly since she's passively, at very least, if not actually actively, supporting the abuse that takes part in her group. And her excuse is, "This is how we survive. This is how we survive until we're rescued." If she loses this idea of rescue, then she's putting up with this for nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So I think she makes an interesting character of, in some ways, how hope can be kind of poisonous.
I mean, she'll do. She's desperate to hold on to it. I mean, she slapped Beth twice.
For basically challenging her, say, "Do not challenge my delusion. I cannot live without this delusion. I need this delusion."
Yes. Yeah.
I think it's complex because we've had groups go toxic before, I mean, repeatedly, and we've even had relatively good people be part of toxic groups because they haven't had choice. They haven't seen any other way to live. We saw that with the governor. We've seen it numerous times in the comics. I think it's interesting with Dawn is she is technically the leader of this group that's de facto, and she is de facto leader, and she's seeing it fall apart, and she can't really do anything about it, and she's actively participating in the evil of the group simply because it's the only thing she can think to do. I think it really kind of complex how that comes together.
Mm-hmm.
She has the power, but in some ways she's kind of helpless because if she uses her theoretical authority to try and stop these abhorrent practices, then she loses it.
Well, that's it. She doesn't have the authority. She doesn't have the control
Yeah,
she thinks she has. Not really.
exactly. I think in some ways that's also represented by her. She hits Beth, and the way she told Noah that the way Noah revealed that she wouldn't bring his father in because he was too big, too strong. She has her authority is an illusion, and she's desperately trying to make sure the people they bring in don't challenge the illusion. And in some ways, I bring it close to the Doctor killing off the other man and
Yeah.
having Beth kill that man. In both cases, their situations are so tenuous in this group that they can't risk anything, any tiny challenge to their authority, and it all comes tumbling down.
hmm I also think it's worth noting that this is a woman in charge.
Mm-hmm.
I know that we've seen men in charge of groups before and women, but given the fact that, Rick is basically, what's the word, a Gary stew?
Yeah, pretty much.
In terms of his leadership, and Carol would make a better leader, but she's not. I would have been happier to see Dawn have, even if the decisions she was making were wrong, I would have been happier to see Dawn have a firmer grip over her people.
Yeah. I think that's the thing that works. I mean, I really do like the what they've created, the dynamic here. But if they were going to create a leader who was weak, who couldn't control their people, and had to make terrible, terrible compromises to try and hold her group together, that's great. I love that. I love the dynamic. I think it's really interesting to develop and examine. But it'd be nice if the leader who did that wasn't the first female leader. Because
Yeah.
it is. Sorry, go on.
I think it's pretty telling that they made her weak and ineffectual.
Yeah. Because all the male leaders, even if they've been evil, have been strong and effective. Terminus, the governor, I mean, they've been evil, but they've also been, strong. Their power was pretty much unchallenged, unquestioned. Rick. So, I mean, that's the whole issue here. It's one of those problems where the storyline isn't inherently wrong, but in the context, it's unfortunate.
Very.
And it's the sort of thing that could have easily been undone if one of these groups had been led by a woman, or if Rick's group was led by a woman.
Yeah, but they've been gender in Walking Dead. The street cis white guy shall lead us is their thing.
It's a rule in all but one dystopian. And even now, I'm kind of looking at Z Nation, and I'm still waiting for some kind of alien death ray to hit Warren and her either die or suddenly magically be changed into a white man. So it's typical and it's complex, it's interesting, but at the same time, it's unfortunate.
It's The Walking Dead. I kind of just look at it that way.
Exactly. I'm not sure about all these. How many more episodes now? We've split the group into 3. How much longer are we going to have that? Is another thing I want to know.
I don't know, but again, if it means that we don't have another season of white people sitting on a porch, split them up.
Yeah.
It seems to be a device they like. And if this device encourages them to add action to each episode, I'm good with it.
I can also see that when you think about it, the group is big now. If you had them all in one place, they'd have to kill them off or just have lots of audience for some main characters to speak, which would have been... I mean, at least with them split up, there's actually a reasonable chance of the minorities saying the odd line. Or giving some angry eyes in a prominent fashion.
Well, I'm never very hopeful on that subject, really.
No, I can't say I am, but I live in hope. Terrible, terrible, deceptive hope.
Should we move on?
I think we probably should. We've got so much to cover now. Shall we go to the next zombie program?
Excuse me?
Next zombie program, Z Nation.
Z Nation. I think it was basically two things this week. Murphy's continued transformation
Hmm.
and Citizen Z's loneliness.
Yeah, and they both actually brought out quite a bit better acting than I'm used to on this show,
Hmm.
which was impressed me because one of the complaints I've had since this show began is the acting has been not really brilliant.
Well, I don't know if it's as bad as you're implying.
Mm, I haven't been that impressed. But then again, to be fair, the main objection I had was Garnet, who was awful. And he was really bad.
Garnett, did you
Yeah,
say?
yeah, Garnet, the guy who died.
Mm. But I know the actor who plays Citizen Z is good. I've seen him in a lot of other things, and if they give him the work to do, he can do it.
So maybe it was directing.
Yeah, yeah. And even though I felt his isolation, I really, really did, and it got me thinking because you can't put someone in jail in solitary considered torture.
Hmm.
And for all the hardships we see the people on the road, no water, no food, no toilet paper, I couldn't survive that part. For sure could
Oh
not
God,
survive
no.
it. Um, Stuff like that. I mean, their suffering is obvious to you. The losses of their friends and things like that. But the whole time you see him and he's drinking vodka with his dog and he's playing video games. And his suffering was less obvious.
But it's. I love the fact they did bring it home this episode. He has, I mean, for 3 years perhaps he has not actually seen anyone.
Hmm.
Or very least for several months.
Yeah.
I think he really did sell it this episode as well. So it was surprisingly deep. This episode was deep, both on several angles.
Hmm.
It again makes me kind of impressed by the show and re-examine exactly what I thought of it to begin with, because I was kind of a little, yeah, this is going to be cheesy silliness, and I kind of take it back.
It.
Respectfully.
I don't know how to take. I don't know how to take the show yet.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really because it started off so ridiculously camp and the Liberty Bell scene, which will go down as the most awesome effect on a zombie show.
That was brilliant.
Plus all of the homages to different zombie shows and zombie movies. You don't really know quite how to take it.
Yeah,
It goes back and forth between good drama with emotion and then dark.
exactly. You go, oh, all this sad and that high build angst, and then, oh, look, we have zombie smoking cannabis and zombie baby.
Hmm. Um, yeah, but I like it.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. At the end of it, I go, you know what? Yeah, actually, this is good. It's weird, but yeah, I'll run with it.
Hmm.
Shall we jump on to the next thing?
Oh, sure.
Constantine had its second episode.
Excuse me. Yes, and Constantine is a right miserable bastard.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly what he is.
I don't mind Constantine the character. I think this second episode is interesting in that it was much worse plot-wise than the pilot, but we've clearly had the swapped sidekick, and I think the new sidekick is much better.
Um, he's My problem with the new sidekick is that she's just as ignorant as the first sidekick.
Mm.
And of course it's she. It's a female, it's a female sidekick to John Constantine who knows everything, who knows what's going on, and it's just such a very typical model.
Mm.
Um, and of course he has to guide her to use her own damn powers.
She still has a lot of problematic tropes, but I think that like the original one took Liv, who doesn't exist in the comics, and she was a bit more fearful, a bit wetter, whereas Zed apparently does exist in the comics, and she's someone who is even though we're starting from the same tired trope,
Hmm.
she's willing to push back against him and assert some degree of agency and strength, even from the weaker position they inevitably put her in. So I think she has more potential than Liv did, and even though we're going to still carry out the same annoying pattern, we are going to see it in a slightly less annoying fashion. The pattern's the same annoying cliche, but the colours aren't quite so jarring.
I, I'm sorry.
I think this will still reflect the same tropes, but I think it will end up being better.
Okay.
But I'm hopeful. With Zed, I'm actually hopeful of seeing a decent program here.
Yeah, I don't know yet. For me,
Yeah,
the jury's out. It's too early. It's 2 seasons. It's only 2 seasons. Sorry, 2 episodes in. So it's too early to call anything, as far as I'm concerned.
yeah. I am concerned. I have one plus. That was some really obscure mythology, bringing up the Cobbly now. That was kind of obscure and very nicely done.
I'd never heard of it before, actually.
It's very Germanic, Welsh, British. It's very Northern European and spread. It's like originally German, then hit England, then hit Wales.
Okay.
Um, but my bad side is we have this whole gypsy magic is the darkest ever, which was so unnecessary.
Yeah. And again, saying gypsy,
Yep,
even just saying the word, even just saying the word gypsy is a problem. Do the writers not realize that this is um
a slur.
thank you, a slur?
And then characterizing them as especially magically evil. And on top of that, the, the woman who called herself Romani was in what looked like an abusive relationship. So I'm not entirely running with the idea she gets her comeuppance by being dragged to hell by her ghostly husband.
Well, yes, because the way she froze up when he said, "I'm hungry now," sort of suggests he hits her,
Exactly.
and um, when when he burned up in the shower, all I could think of is, he probably caught what was coming to him. Oh,
Exactly.
and then they have her getting sort of flirty with Constantine, the Merry Widow,
Hmm.
and we're supposed to see that as a negative. Well, if your man is beating on you, right, how can it, why would you feel sorry to be free of your abuser? Excuse me, even if it came at the point of death. So
Exactly.
to me, not only was there a problem with the language used to describe this woman and the portrayal, it sort of in a way minimized the harm of domestic violence. And and demonizing the victim. Um, it just really wasn't. necessary at all. And on that note, I am going to move on to the Vampire Diaries. I know. Teen Angst Central. But the reason I'm going to talk about the Vampire Diaries this week is because we had Bonnie and Damon stuck in, this alternate Mystic Falls in the past. And we watched them now for a couple of weeks getting friendly. Damon is making pancakes for Bonnie every morning for breakfast. And, excuse me, out of necessity, these two have sort of become friends. I guess this is understandable because they don't have anybody else to talk to. Even though I don't necessarily approve of a Bonnie Damon friendship, given that Bonnie knows exactly what Damon is and has never looked at him with the rose-colored glasses that Elena has. So all this big workup for them to get out of the past land, and what happens? Well, Bonnie, of course, sacrifices herself for Damon. Somebody tell me why. I see no reason for Bonnie to sacrifice herself for Damon and trap herself in this alternate world. She and Damon weren't lifelong friends. There weren't any real emotions there. But once again, Bonnie is sacrificing herself. And that's something we have seen over and over and over again with the Vampire Diaries. Bonnie is the sacrificial lamb. She's there to do um, the woo woo when needed and otherwise into the plot box. So I now believe, now that Bonnie has sacrificed herself for Damon, Bonnie is going to effectively go into the plot box until they somehow get around to, remembering her. And it will probably be a case of something is after Elena and they need Bonnie, so now let's free Bonnie, you know? Um, and in a show that has a horrible record for people of color, this continued treatment of Bonnie just amplified. I looked at it as I was watching this. I thought, oh my, yep, Juliplex World. It's exactly what this is because once again, the sacrificial Bonnie.
It's the same. Sorry, just had a big technical thing.
Hmm.
It's the same trope we've seen repeated so many times. When does she catch a break?
Never.
What got me is how pointless it was. They could have pinned him down, imprisoned him, buried him, tied him up, and come back the next day with Bonnie healed, with Damon's blood, if not the woo-woo eclipse thing, and tried
Hmm.
again. It's not like they had a deadline or anything.
No, because the eclipse happens every day at the same time.
Exactly. It wasn't just a sacrifice, it was a pointless sacrifice. It's like Bonnie is so used to sacrificing now that she doesn't know how not to sacrifice herself.
Well, it's just essentially the status quo. And as I was saying, this is the excuse to dump Bonnie to the plot box till the precious Elena needs something again.
Exactly. And
That's all
instead we've
this
got
is.
Damon out for lots of relationship angst.
Oh, well, yeah, Damon's back, and now does she ask Alaric to bring back her memories of love for him?
Ugh.
Especially with that new human that's so into her,
Oh, he's
who
so
apparently
dead.
actually attends the classes that she doesn't.
I like the fact that they're in college now, and the only classes we see her in is Alaric, so she can try and set him up with another teacher. Which, by the way, creepy. Who does that? Who tries to set up two of their college
well,
professors with each other?
well, the one time we saw her in the hospital with another doctor, and I actually had to laugh because Elena is a junior in in this university. Am I correct?
If she's that, yes.
She is not a med student. So if she had a major in, say, biochem,
Mm-hmm.
she would be in a lab. You have to take your MCATs before you can go to med school. It means you have to get your undergrad, take your MCATs, and then get into medical school. And they don't let you on the floor of a hospital for years later. What the hell is this?
So,
What the hell is this magical leap? And even when they told her that she was consigned to meds, it was still absolutely ridiculous. And I know we need to suspend reality when watching this show, but sometimes they just push it to the point.
it particularly gets me that every time they go to college, it's to set up another party. It's exactly the same dynamic that existed when they were at school, technically
Hmm.
school.
How is she passing anything?
Is she even? Clearly, she's compelling people.
It's you have to actually attend some classes. No, a prof isn't gonna chase you down if you're missing lectures and whatnot. But if you hope to at least steal the class notes from somebody,
Do something. And how many parties can one place have? At school, it was constant parties. At college, now we've had what, 2, 3, 4?
you could
There's
get away with it because it
always
was
a party.
homecoming, right? And there's a lot of parties around homecoming.
But it's always one event or other because we do it by the weekly episodes. So even though only a day has passed in Vampire Diaries world, a week has passed in our world. So we're getting to the big events that have parties more quickly. And she just
Hmm.
seems to go from, like, say, Halloween party, Thanksgiving party, Christmas party.
Party.
And also, Elena's weird. I mean, as far as I know, she didn't set up this party, so why is she inviting everyone? Her college professors, a guy she wants to date, Stefan. I mean, literally, why does she do this? I've seen military recruiters who are less gung-ho about signing people up.
Because she's Elena and she's a sweetheart.
Say, come to the party, come to the party. Why are you inviting everybody? And why? And
We should talk about the other woman of color bullshit in this episode.
Ivy. Oh.
Yes.
What got me last episode is no one gave a shit about her dying.
Hmm.
And in this episode, she gives a shit for like 2 minutes before wanting to party and worrying about Caroline and Stefan.
Why is she worried about Caroline and Stefan, considering that Stefan was supposed to be her boyfriend? Weren't
Because
those two dating?
and it's like, is this? I can only assume this is terrible writing because they assume that some of the audience is actually so oblivious they've missed the not at all subtle subtext that's developing here.
We get it.
Mm-hmm.
We get it. And like she has no concern for herself, really.
Mm-hmm.
She's only concerned about the love life of Caroline and Stefan.
She has had a week. No, she has had a day. 1 day to get used to being a vampire. And no one is helping her. Stefan broke her neck because she was being a nuisance, and then tried to abandon her on Caroline. What the hell?
What I find interesting about it is in many ways she's very like Caroline when Caroline became a vampire.
Mm-hmm.
And Stefan had all the patience in the world for Caroline, you
But
know. Whereas with Ivy, it's directly his fault Ivy is a vampire. He's got no patience. I need to move on. Here's your ring. I'm out of here.
and that's over the ring. They're not even showing Luke while they're turning him into a magical item factory.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a case of it was really glaring how little everybody cared about her. I think it was the second most morally gross thing on this episode.
Yeah.
The first one which got me is Tyler ran over someone in his car. He's there dying, and there's Tyler sat there going, "I'm going to be a werewolf." It's like, you nearly killed a guy. Can you actually spare a second to pretend you care about the guy dying at your feet?
Only how it impacted him.
Exactly, and that whole scene was. We're all supposed to say, "Oh, poor Liv, that she went through this, and this is proof of their love." But it's a case of, wow, someone's just died, and you really don't care, not even slightly.
No, not at all.
It's reached the point where you kind of say, Trip needs to be the protagonist and hunting down all these vampires because they're all evil, all of them, really, really evil.
So selfish.
hmm And at this stage, I kind of can't really support anyone because they're all so evil. And I don't even know if I want Ivy to be killed off or not, because it doesn't need more people of colour death on this show. But at the same time, if this is how they treat her already,
Ivy's better off dead.
exactly. And it's a case of what is going to happen, and nothing good is going to happen. And I actually like watching that one of our commenters, Sunless Nick, said, which should happen in the Vampire Diaries. Nothing's actually happening on the vampire side of things. It's just Elena's love life, Elena's love life, Elena's love life. That is actually all that is happening in Vampire World. Contrast that with all of the witches which happened last season, the other side now with Bonnie, a guy who steals magic. Why isn't Bonnie the protagonist? All the storylines should be focusing on her.
Bonnie's black.
Yes, exactly. So we need a spin-off. We need the Bonnie Bennett show, which will be infinitely more interesting than Elena's Love Life show.
Except I don't want another Julie Plex show on television.
Yeah, well,
It's not that I'm not enjoying the originals.
Hmm.
I am. But their treatment of people of color is just as shitty. Do we really want to give Julie Pleck another show on television? Think about that.
It will happen, particularly now that Tomorrow People's been cancelled. She will bring out something else.
It has been cancelled, has it?
Tomorrow People was cancelled.
I didn't realize that. Oh, you're gonna miss it.
Yeah, like being slowly tortured with blenders.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Oh, poor Paul, your favorite show.
I hated that show with a fiery passion of 1,000 suns. Anyway, you have to deal with Julie Plec. I have to deal with Goya. So, we both have our nemesis.
Yes, we do. We should talk quickly about American Horror Story.
American Horror Story. I'm actually kind of conflicted this season because every season it kind of does every episode now it's done something which I've been fairly impressed by, or I thought, yeah, actually that's quite important. And it's done a lot with covering some marginalizations, both in how the freaks, to take their word for it, are treated, how Elsa is playing this whole benevolent zookeeper and being called out for it. And even though she technically would fit their own definition, and the way, even when she was a sex worker, she always looked back in contempt at the other women doing exactly the same work as she was, always having to make herself better by the contempt of others. It was a really good call out.
Yeah.
And even like Esmeralda telling Jimmy, Jimmy's always saying the townies haters, the townies haters, and there's Esmeralda saying, well, yeah, but as a woman, she's also afraid to go out in the dark with him. It's not all townie / performer isn't the only oppression out there. And so they get quite a lot of complexity, and then you throw in a lot of dubiousness as well.
I'm going to kill you because you're dark. I was like, really?
It's
and from that he moved on to Killer Clown, which the clown story broke my heart. It really, really did. Oh, he was, he had a form of intellectual disability. the thing that he loved most in the world was taken away from him. Um, and he was pushed out of society, and he finally broke.
Yeah.
And what I don't like about it is that once again we have another example of a non-neurotypical person being violent.
Yeah.
Oh, I've seen enough of those portrayals, enough. Um, and you know, it the trope is way overdone. It's way overdone, and it's extremely damaging.
It is. And it's they do it time and again because it's lazy writing. It is easier to use the mentally ill as a motive for a serial killer than actually having to develop an actual killer.
Hmm.
It is toxic.
Extremely so. And I'm not saying that kidnapping women and children and scaring the shit out of them is appropriate,
Hmm.
right? But I had empathy for the character based in everything that he's been through. I mean, accusing someone of being a pedophile when they're not a pedophile is
Hmm.
just the most horrific thing at any in any age.
Exactly.
You know, um, and they knew that would hurt him.
It was. It was. It's again. It's something which has happened a lot this season. They're actually doing some really good things, and then they bring it in with something which goes, no, why? Don't do this. Don't do this. Why are you doing this? Why are you ruining it? You were doing so well.
Mm. I don't approve.
No, and
But
that's
it's
what's kind.
American Horror Story. I don't expect to approve.
Well, that's the thing. Because I think it's in some ways it's actually kind of better than previous American Horror Stories in many ways because
Yes.
it has that positive there. It's not like the previous seasons which were just unrelentingly awful. Its treatment of the issues regarding disability and people with non-typical bodies and the issues they face as not being terrible. It's not always been perfect, but it's not horrendous. And you kind of
Hmm.
look at it and go, well, you're doing surprisingly well, but you still got these issues here.
Yes, exactly. Also, Patti LaBelle is dead, and I am not happy.
I didn't like the fact she was made, but I was loving the fact she was actually staring down um, Dandy. It actually was quite a decent. And then nope, dead.
I love that she's like when he told her, "I hate you," she was, "I hate you too."
Exactly.
It was good to see the rebellion. What wasn't good is seeing the rebellion, you know, punished in that
Punished.
way. If they had kept it up all season, with him being aggressive to her and her standing up to him and him backing down, with Patty being the only person that he deferred to,
That would have been awesome.
really good. I could have really gotten behind that.
And it also, sorry, gone.
I'm not happy that he slit her throat, and it's supposed to be this is his full transformation to psychopath because now he's no longer afraid and he can kill the black lady.
Hmm. And she was just there. She just became totally disposable. She became a
Hmm.
tool, and any attempt to make her more than that has just fallen by the wayside.
And she was the only one who was wise. She told him flat out, "I know who you are. I see what you do. Your mother may not see you, but I see you."
Hmm.
And I really appreciated that. I really had come to appreciate her character. And I absolutely hate to see black women playing maids.
Yeah.
But this was an instance that worked for me until they killed her off. For me, they ruined her character, any kind of subversiveness that came with her character, the minute they had her killed off.
I still often wonder who sacrificed to what demon for this show. How did they get Patti LaBelle to play this role?
I don't
How?
know, because it's not like Patty needs the money.
Yeah, and it's the same thing which I ask again and again. Like, why the? How did American Horror Story land this cast?
Your guess is as good as well. It's seen as a good vehicle for older actresses because
Yeah,
there aren't a lot of roles out there for women. Like the women who are starring in American Horror Story, there's not a lot of roles out there for them. Hollywood tends to be the preserve of young women, and by
yeah,
the time you're hitting your 30s, they want you to play somebody's mother. You know, and some of these women are well into their 50s now. Certainly, Patty is over 60, maybe 60.
yeah. They still look at it and you go, "You've got Patti LaBelle, and this is how you're using her. You've got Angela Bassett, and she had one line, which is again sexualizing her."
Yeah, don't. That's the That's what I think the temptation is on the part of the actresses, really,
Yeah,
because none of them need the money. None of them really need the money at this point.
but
But it's
this is the
about
chance.
continuing to practice their craft in a misogynist world that thinks women are washed up by the time they're 35.
Like Angela Bassett, she can still pass for 20. She's
I
sold her soul to
know.
some god anyway.
She is smoking, isn't she? And her legs. Oh, good heavens.
She's like that woman on Teen Wolf. She's been playing high school students for like the last 30 years. She
Awesome
plays Ms. Moreau. It's just
genetics.
how? Yes. So it's someone. So the next vampire show will be her playing herself and revealing that yes, actually she is a vampire.
Hmm. Some people just have those genetics, you know.
Hmm. It's
Uh,
quite surprising.
well, she's so beautiful. Black don't crack, by the way, so that helps.
There's certainly something going on. I think it's demonic sacrifice. Bianca Lawson and Angela Bassett cannot look that way naturally at their age.
I know Angela Bassett's aging better than Casey Kasem did. She just like perfect, frozen. She's like a walking Madame Tussauds wax figure there, just frozen in time.
Somewhere out there, there are portraits of them which are slowly aging, and they've got a
Oh,
full-on Dorian engraving going.
Doreen Gray, you're bad.
It's the only explanation. But before beyond discussing immortality, we need to run on to the next one. Oh my God, Bianca Lawson's actually older than me. Anyway,
Are you feeling bad now? Sometimes it's
uh,
better not to know.
exactly. We should leap on to the next one because we've got a little time left. And I suppose we should touch on the book of the week. Can we do a quick look on Haven? We know it's on. We are watching it. We are recapping it. Nothing's happening. That's why we're not seeing anything.
Except, I do have one thing to say about Haven.
Yes.
Why isn't Nathan dead?
Oh, we
There's
could wish.
never been anyone more wet lettuce than Nathan.
What amuses me is they keep putting in him they keep trying to resurrect this Audrey Nathan Duke love triangle. It's how is it a love triangle? Nathan Duke, Nathan Duke. Why is this a
Okay,
choice?
so we have all moved on, and I picked Duke. I mean, come on.
Exactly. But yeah, so and much the same applies to Grimm. Other than our complaints we said last week about all the raping, which they're
Hmm.
ignoring, it's not happening. Nothing's happening.
I think we're on the verge of something. I do. I don't like that Trouble was kidnapped this week because we're going to see Nick coming to rescue her.
Yeah.
And I guess the excuse is Trouble's youth. But when we consider again, gender, there's a problem in terms of Grimm. I'm sorry Adeline is in this prison thing because I'm totally team Adeline all the way. Even though she's a rapist, you don't steal somebody's baby.
Yep. If they'd have treated her fairly from the beginning.
Yes. You don't steal somebody's baby. It's just not done, and expect them to just take it passively. And
Hmm.
she's evil for fighting for wanting her baby back. She's evil because she's a rapist.
But they
She's
don't
not
harm
evil
her.
for wanting her baby back.
Exactly. Okay, book of the week was Prince Lestat by Anne Rice. Anne Rice has written a new book after many, many years and numerous treaties trying to stop her. So to say all the good things about this book, I think you should start, Renee, because I have nothing good to say.
Okay, first off, fans of Anne Rice, I think, are really, really going to love this book. It, in many ways, is
Long-term drug
very.
addiction will do that to you. Sorry, go on.
Paul, do you want to sit in the naughty chair?
This book. No, no, say the positive things. Take the positive.
Okay, well then. Okay, it very much reminded me of Interview with the Vampire. In the way, in the way it was sort of written. Um, Mainly because I guess it had a plot moving through it, and it had a story you could follow. The problem is, okay, I can't say the problems yet. Um,
Come on, find something else
okay,
positive to say. It had a
we were
plot
back
we got
having
so far.
Lestat as the star of the show, so we moved away from the Mayfair witches and the Taltos, right? And Lestat has always been the brat prince of this universe and the star of this universe, so I think it was really important. It was like a coming home. Um, we also got some important answers for the series, like we found out the origins of the Talamasca. You know, those who watch but never get involved.
Hmm.
So this is a mystery that has followed across the entire series, including the Mayfair witches. I think it was important that we got the Talamasca's origin story. With more exploration of the spirit Amel, um, which infected Akasha, and then from that, vampires came from that. So we had more exploration of this mysterious energy, which of course deepens the origin story altogether for vampires themselves and their world. So I think there were some good things going on there. Okay, Paul, get it out
Right.
of your system.
I will say I will agree with Renee. It had plot, which is actually makes it a lot better than the last 5 or 6 books by Anne Rice, which didn't have any plot at all, ever. So yeah, it's a plus. It's a plus because of damn faint praise, but it's a plus. The problem is that this plot is buried. And I'm not just talking standard Anne Rice, let's make everything bright purple with ridiculous descriptiveness. It is buried in some very minor, some side storylines that don't go anywhere. I mean, you mentioned the Talastalker's heritage, but it wasn't actually relevant to anything in this book, and they didn't develop it. They spent lots and lots, and oh my god, so many pages describing it, but it didn't connect to anything. And then we had the science vampires. We had these 2 vampires who were adapting science and looking at science for once. And I was really happy about that because every single vampire in this world is a terrible, talentless romantic poet who tries to write history books badly. So having some scientists would have been interesting, but they didn't do anything with it. And on top of this, we have every single character who has ever been named in the series except for Blackwood Fire and Blood Canticle, and I think they aren't included because I think even Anne Rice likes to pretend those books didn't exist. But every single character you have ever seen in this book, in this series, have all come together in this book. We've got Marius, we've got Armand, we've got Eleni, we've got Eugenie, we've got Alessandra, we've got Rosamades, we've got Louis, we've got Sibel and Benji and Gabrielle and
Armand.
Caramora and Arjun and Armand. And there are gazillions of characters in this book, and none of them do anything. And on
Hmm.
top of that, we've got new characters come up, Rose and Victor and Severine. I don't know if she's been mentioned in the past. And tiny one-name mentions being developed into, well, not developed, but appearing, like Antoine. And some of these are getting entire chapters from their point of view. There's no need.
Okay, I'm going to stop you there. There is a need. The need to have these chapters is so that we can understand how the voice is working.
We got that from Cyril, Lestat, and Marius's point of view. Antoine didn't. Antoine never even spoke in the voice. Nor did Rose.
Well, Rose is a connector, right? We know that when they destroyed that island, Lestat and Akasha, he saved someone that day. A sort of atonement, as you will, for all the men that he killed.
But it didn't even
Right?
really connect to that much.
It does. It connects what happened in the past to today. It ties you back to Akasha.
But we've already got Maharat and Makare running around to ties to Akasha. Everybody talking about Akasha's history ties us to Akasha.
She was a more solid foundation.
But that was only like one paragraph in her entire story, which took a whole chapter to tell in exquisitely painful detail.
Okay, well, the point of it is so that you can see Lestat is trying to make up for what he perceives to be his bad deeds, and he's making up for it by giving a little girl every opportunity that he can.
He just dumped lots of money on her.
He did more than dump lots of money on her, but it's a way of giving back Rose, his atonement.
But it never really went that way. I mean, he didn't even particularly think about her from his point of view.
That's not true. He specifically said that he gave her up, realizing that he couldn't continue to play that role in her life without bringing her deeper into his world, and he felt Rose coming deeper into his world would be a danger for her.
But that's it. His only thoughts of her is casting her aside.
That's not true. She talks about how he visited her several times growing up, bringing her little gifts.
That's Rose's point of view.
He toured museums with her. Well, if he didn't care, he wouldn't have toured museums with her and things like that.
He took the odd break with her. And
really, why do you have to be so cynical?
Because that's how it came across. She barely saw him for months on end.
That's from the most cynical read of that story.
Yeah, but he didn't see her for months and months on end. He got some completely non-entities to look after her instead, while he went off and did his thing being mopey in the south of France.
Well, he couldn't very well raise her. So what did you expect him to do?
To be involved in her life.
He was involved in her life.
Even better, for her not to be there.
Oh, for heaven's sakes, you're being impossible now.
There was just so much in this book that did not add anything to the overall plot, character development, or anything. There was just
I knew we were going to have words. I knew we were going to have words. Go ahead.
You are so forgiving of this story. It was
I am not being forgiving of this story. I'm very honest about what this story is. I fully admit that it was filled with ridiculous purple prose. I loved going around. It was like being in the 1960s hippie commune with all the love flowing here and there.
Oh, the love is hilarious. I swear any of these characters passes as sheep, they declare their internal love for the sheep.
Yeah. I mean, I think the idea behind it is that vampires feel things more passionately, and they don't have, you and I, we have all of humanity to take from for companions. Vampires have a very, very shallow pool. So those that they choose to share their life with, become exceedingly important to them. And that's what's behind all of this I love you stuff.
But that would make sense if it was a case of they fell in love with someone and then fell in love with them completely passionately. because of it. But this is, I saw you across a crowded room. I heard about you. I happened to be walking past you, and then love.
Okay, you're talking about Gregory professing love for Lestat without meeting them, right? And that love he's talking about is a juvenile form of love, in the same way that maybe some preteen girl watches, I don't know, some stupid little boy band like One Direction, for instance, and swears eternal love for like the lead singer or something. It's a love in that kind of vein.
But it's the same thing we've seen throughout the series. Lestat was the same with Merritt. Lestat was the same with Seth. Lestat was the same with Farid. Louis was the same with Merritt. Quinn was the same with absolutely everybody under the sun, even when he was human.
What I'm saying, though, that is the case with Gregory. Your specific example of not even meeting someone and declaring love, you're talking about Gregory, and that's why. That explains that.
He's 6,000 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And your excuse for this 6,000-year-old is schoolgirl crush?
Okay, look, I think you're intentionally harsh because it's Anne Rice.
I think you're intentionally forgiving because you're trying to recapture nostalgia. There is nothing good here. And on top of that, we have a gazillion characters and their voices are identical. We switch from point of view to point of view to point of view. And if you didn't read the names, you would not realize who is talking, because Victor, Lestat, Antoine, Rose, they all talk the same. This ridiculously elaborate purple prose nonsense, whether they're 19 or 9,000. It's terrible in terms of characterization, which there isn't really any.
Okay. I think that there was definitely some difference, let's say, between Benji. Benji did not sound like everybody else. You know,
I kind of found he did. It was the same kind of over elaborate
it
melodramatic.
was not. It was not. Benji was talking about creating unity amongst the vampires. He wasn't talking about his tortured soul or classical music or anything. He was trying to bring people together. Benji had his own unique voice in the story.
His topics were different, but his tone was the same.
It is not the case, and the same thing is true of Farid, the doctor. His language was all of science.
His language was largely babble because that's what Anne Rice thinks science is, but his tone was the same elaborate melodrama.
It was not the same elaborate. He was direct and to the point. Unlike the rest of the vampires, he was very direct and to the point.
And not
Again, I think you're seeing what you want to see. I think you're reading a lot of things into it because you went into it with bias.
I think that you went into it in bias and were grossly forgiving. You would never have been this optimistic about an book by another author.
That is not
particularly
true.
when you've got characters from point of view. You're choosing characters where we don't have point of view scenes from them, because particularly when we read their thought processes and their point of view and their opinions, and are in their heads, every head is identical. And it's not recent, it's the same problem that has been throughout the series.
I just gave you two examples to counteract what you just said.
Both, first, I don't agree on either of them. Second of all, they are two characters who had no point of view scenes. Third of all, they are two characters out of a cast of at least a dozen.
Oh, Gabrielle. Gabrielle's tone was different.
Gabrielle had at most two paragraphs worth of dialogue.
My point to you is you said they all sounded the same. So now you have three examples who did not sound the same.
She didn't speak. That's why she didn't sound the same.
She did speak.
Went to Lestat and said, "Come see Gabrielle, come see Severin," and then they went to Severin.
No. She called Lestat on all his bullshit angsting and snarked about him being the brat prince.
It was ended still in very elaborate terms. And she was, again, you're taking characters who appear for
It
two
wasn't in elaborate terms. It was direct and to the point in the same way that Benji and Farid were direct and to the point.
Nothing about this book was direct and to the point.
Oh, for heaven's sakes. Bias.
Incredible bias, so forgiving of her.
I am not being forgiving of her, but I'm not being forgiven of her, but I think you're holding her to a higher standard because you can't stand Anne
I
Rice.
think I'm not
And
making
there's
a huge...
reason to say that a lot of her work is problematic. And, she loves purple more than Barney. There is no doubt about that. And she has a tendency to have every character freaking love classical literature and art, you know?
Mm-hmm.
All these things are true of her.
And this all applied here, and it buried the plot. The plot was completely overwhelmed. I had no joy in this book, honestly. I struggled to finish it.
I didn't really. I mean, my testing of a good book is I'm reading the book. Do I feel the urge to get up and sweep the floor or do anything else, right? Because I read on my tablet, so it's very easy to get lost on Facebook or something else. And I didn't feel that temptation. I just sat down and I read this book. It was long. It should have been shorter than it was, but I wasn't actively pulled away from the story to do something else. So for me, not a great book, not even really a good book, but a passable book.
For me, it wasn't the worst thing she's written by any stretch. I have read Anne Rice that is worse, so in some cases I did feel a profound relief with this book, in that it wasn't another Black Farm or Blood Canticle. But it was painful, and I kept reading it because I knew I had, in some ways, because it's a book of the week, helped because I knew I had a deadline. I had to get it read and reviewed before this Monday coming. If it wasn't book of the week, I would have had trouble finishing it. I was so frustrated by the lack of relevancy throughout most of this book. And the way it ended, I found immensely frustrating because we finally actually reached the core of the plot, and then it was kind of resolved so clumsily and rather predictably. I was very happy when it was over.
I think the ending led to what is going to be the next book. It's clear that something is coming with the Talamasca. And I enjoyed the hints that she dropped there. Not all is going to be good, and Lestat's reign is definitely going to have problems, and quite early on.
I didn't see those hints, but I would hope she would develop the Talamasca, otherwise there'd be no point in bringing them up. Do we know what she's
staring at Lestat in a distrustful way? And as much as they want to talk to him, they certainly don't trust him. Something is up with the Talamasca.
Well, I wouldn't trust Lestat either, but we shall see. Do we know if she's bringing out another book?
I assume so. Who knows? She said she was done with this series and she came back, so we'll see.
Can we sue her for lying?
Maybe it's because her werewolf series is just so bloody horrendous.
Probably better than this.
Oh no, it's horrendously bad.
I'm hoping that this is the last Anne Rice I have to read for a long time, and then I'll be a much happier person.
You just have the Wolf series to read.
No, that's yours. You like Anne Rice. You're the one who's actually the...
I didn't say I liked Anne Rice. I just think you're being unreasonable and too hard on her.
I'm just not presenting any different standard to her.
Yes, you are. A harsher one. Yes.
I'm ensuring that she applies the same standards of everyone else. The mother of the genre does not win any points in my book. And the same with Tolkien. Just because you were one of the first to do it doesn't mean that your stuff gets a softer brush.
Okay, Paul, you're wrong.
No, you are totally wrong.
Anyway, the long and short of it is, if you are a fan, I would like this book.
I will agree with that, because if you're a fan and are still a fan after Blood Canticle and Blackwood Farm, given your taste, you will probably like this book.
It's not bad to sit on a couch on a rainy Sunday afternoon and just read for a couple hours. It's not that bad. It passes time. I've read worse.
I think that if it was a rainy afternoon and you sat on the couch with some time to kill, read something else, it'll pass faster.
You're incorrigible.
You are just wrong on
I
this
am
one.
not wrong. I think you've been way too harsh on this book.
I think you've been so forgiving, it's unreal.
I knew when I read the review we were going to have words.
You actually emailed me while you were reading this book complaining about it.
I was complaining about the purple prose. I've never liked it. I still don't like it. I don't think but I, I accept that this is what I'm going to get when I open an Anne Rice book. Everything you've come to expect from her writing, that's exactly what she delivers with this book. And you can't then turn around and attack her for writing the way she writes.
Yeah, I can criticize the fact that that's again like if I said, "Oh, Laurel K. Hamilton has written another terrible porn story and tried to sell it as an actual book," I wouldn't give it a higher rating or go easy on it because it's Laurel K. Hamilton. Of course, she's written terrible porn. That's all she writes. The fact that someone has a habit of writing in a certain terrible manner does not make it less terrible.
Yeah, but you won't even acknowledge that, that the book is classic Anne Rice. This is who she is on paper.
Well, it is, but I don't see how it's relevant. I don't with Laura K. Hamilton, or if I do it as an accusation rather than as a forgiving nation. I would start with, "Oh, look, this is a book with no plot, lots of angst, and terrible written sex scenes. Typical Laura K. Hamilton." But that's not a good thing.
Okay, I give up. You're still wrong, though.
Yep, you have
I'm
your.
only giving up because we're out of time. But you're still so very, very wrong.
Nope. I
You don't
understand.
have to fan poodle Anne Rice to be fair to her.
I
I'm just saying.
so you don't have to be forgiving to her to pretend that you're giving her the respect you erroneously think she
Not
deserves.
about giving her the respect because she's the grande dame of the genre. It really isn't. My complaints about the werewolf series show that I have no problem saying when her work is absolute utter shit.
Which is what I do, and this is.
This is
It's not
not.
as bad as it could have been, which
Uh, it
it
is
has
not. It
seemed.
is not. It is not. I've read far worse. It is not.
I've read worse. Blackwood Farm and Blood Canticle. I wouldn't necessarily say I've read a lot worse, but I've certainly read worse, which is why I'd probably put it down as a 1.5 on the outside, because I have read worse.
It
I've
should have
also read
been
a
a
whole
3.
lot better.
It should have been a 3. It's
You've just said
readable.
you had nothing really. Free is good. Free is a good
It's
rating for a
readable.
book.
It's readable.
Yeah, that's a 2.5. It's readable. It doesn't hurt.
The level of your
Anyway,
wrongness, Paul. The level of your wrongness.
our book of the week. We're gonna have to wrap it up then because we are reaching the end. So we'll leave Renee and I'll have very much wrongness.
Yes, and hang on. I would appreciate no comments calling me a fan poodle, just because I can do fair when fair is necessary. Thank you very
Mm-hmm.
much.
Uh-uh.
Go ahead.
I will wrap up and refrain from mentioning yapping. Uh,
But you
that is
just
the end of
did.
our book of the week for next week is I've lost it now. West of Sunset by Dennis Hopkins, which we will be, of course, reviewing, and the review will be up this Monday. In the meantime, we'll be following all of our usual shows: Grimm, Constantine, hoping it gets better; Vampire Diaries, hoping Elena dies; Originals, hoping everyone gets over their daddy issues; The Walking Dead, hoping someone eats Rick. And we'll be back on the podcast, the same time, same place, here at 7 o'clock EST. In the meantime, you can, of course, find all of our reviews on fangsfantasy.com. You can also find us on Twitter, Facebook, Goodreads, Book Likes, Library Thing, Tumblr, everywhere else. Fangs for Fantasy, you can find it all the links on our blog. You can always find us. Feel free to drop us an email or comment on our blog on any issues we've raised here, and to tell Renee how wrong she is.
Or to tell Paul that he's extremely wrong, biased, and unfair.
Tell her that she's completely. You can't argue with the poodles.
Oh, stop.
So,
I
that'll see
am
you.
not a fan poodle.
No comment. See you all next week, people. Same time, same place.
Good night, everyone.
Bye bye.